and welcome to my channel. My name is Bettina Ray. I am a yoga teacher. I specialize in everything to do with fertility, pregnancy, birth, and early motherhood. If you are interested in any of those areas, please make sure that you subscribe so that you get notified when my next video lands. And please feel free to share away because I always appreciate your support. So in today's video, I want to talk to you about 5 ways you can make sure that you have a more positive birth experience. Now, I share these because my first birth with my first son was not the most enjoyable experience at all. In fact, it was quite traumatic. There were interventions that happened that I really now believe weren't necessary at all. The reason why I believe it didn't go so well is because I had naively just gone into birth assuming that the doctors and the midwives they're the experts, they know what to do, and I just handed over all of my power to them, not realizing that they work within a system that has rules that aren't necessarily within the best interests of the birthing mother. So second time around, I educated myself and I learned how my body worked, and I had the most amazing, empowering birth experience in my second birth. And I want that for you too. So I share these tips with you today so that you can hopefully have a positive birth experience, whether you've already been through one like myself that was a little bit traumatic, or whether you're going into this brand new. Good on you for educating yourself early. So let's get into these 5 tips. So my first tip is to choose your caregiver and how you're going to birth or where you're going to birth. So the medical model that you're birthing within, really carefully. And I know it's really hard when you're a first-time mum and you maybe don't even have any mum friends yet. Maybe none of your friends have had babies. It's really hard to know where to go. But you need to find some women in your life who you can talk to about their experiences locally to know what to do and what sounds good and what sounds like is the right birth for you. And we're really lucky that we have so many choices. So here in Australia, you can go through the public system, you can go through the private system, you can have a private midwife through the public system, you can home birth, you can free birth. What other options? You can do like a shared GP model where your GP mostly looks after you throughout the pregnancy, and then you book into hospital when you're ready and you have whoever's there on the day. There are so many options and we're so lucky to have them, but you need to understand that there are differences between them and that different practitioners come at birth with different perspectives, so different individuals. I know people get annoyed sometimes when I generalize in this way, but I think it's often helpful to think of the fact that an obstetrician who I'm the first one to put my hand up and say, yep, I want an obstetrician there if something goes wrong. But an obstetrician is a surgeon. They look at birth from a more surgical perspective. I think it's important just to keep that in mind as you go into birth and what you're wanting to pick, what choice is right for you. Neither is wrong or right, whether you choose a natural birth, whether you choose to use certain interventions, whether you go for pain relief, or whether you end up with a scheduled Caesar. None of these choices are wrong. The important thing is you know why these choices are right for you and that you make the right one for you. My second piece of advice is to question everything. So for me, this really comes from personal experience. First time around, I questioned nothing. I went into it pretty much blind. I did a little bit of, I knew the 3 stages of labor and what happened in them, but I didn't know how to work with my body. So when things were suggested to me, like, well, we'll break your water and get things going, I never questioned it. I just, okay, sure, right. I'm assuming that's happening for a reason. And I didn't even think to ask, but you need to ask these questions. Why am I being induced? What's the reason for it? What happens if I just wait? Is there any danger to my baby? Is there any danger to me? These are really important questions to ask because often when we open ourselves up to one intervention, they kind of have a bit of a flow-on effect, which we'll get to in other videos, or you can check out in my online yoga circle. I've got the full birth wisdom course in there, which you can access for just the $14 a month membership. So if you go and check that out, watch the video on the cascade of interventions and how these things often have a flow-on effect. And then you'll know why you want to ask why to everything that is offered to you. My third tip is obviously educate yourself on how your body works during labor. So it's really important to understand things like how fear works within the body, how that has a physiological effect on what your body does during labor, because we're not designed to birth when we're afraid. Because if you think back to cavemen days, if we were birthing whilst we were afraid, we would have been afraid of something that was affecting our livelihood. So we wouldn't want to bring a baby into the world if there was something happening that was making us fearful, if there was a tiger or a bear about to attack. Just like any other animal, our bodies are designed to stop labor when we're afraid. So we really need to understand how fear affects birth and the tools that you can use to calm down. I really recommend using this time now while you're pregnant to learn how your body works, how you can work with it, and what tools you can take into labor and birth to have a less painful, more enjoyable birth. And it sounds like it's not possible when you're so afraid, but it really is. The more you can relax, the more enjoyable birth can be. So this might be you do a hypnobirthing course. It might be you check out my online yoga circle where I've got all of the videos there that will help you to understand how your body works and how to work with it. You could read a book on birthing skills. There's lots of information out there. Just make sure you take the time to look into it. Even asking a friend who's had a positive birth experience to share what she did is really helpful going into your birth. My fourth tip for a more positive birth experience is to make sure your support person, whether that be your partner, your husband, your mother, a friend, your doula, knows how you want to be supported. So once you've educated yourself, you need to educate them, because during birth, you really want to be like in your own bubble. You don't want to be coming out to answer questions or to make decisions with doctors or nurses. So when they come in and say, would you like this? Rather than having to get out of the birthing space and this real inward space that we need to create, rather than having to come out of that, you want your support person to be like, just direct questions to me, talk to me. And you want to be able to trust that they know your preferences beforehand so that they can answer in the moment. So you don't have to come out, because as soon as you come out, it's like you go from being in the body to in the head. And that often creates more pain because you get into that fearful thinking mode, and you want to stay away from that. You just want to stay in the body, nice and relaxed. And my fifth and final tip for a more positive birth experience is to let go of those strict expectations. And like I said to you before, my second birth was amazing. But I do remember feeling after the birth that I was a bit disappointed because I ended up with a 3rd-degree tear. And I remember feeling like a little bit at first, oh, but it had gone so well. And then I failed. But it was just that he came out with his hands on either side of his head because the cord was wrapped them, that it had kept them there. So it was nothing I did, it was nothing he did, it was nothing anyone did. It just, that's how it happened. I think we almost set ourselves up for failure when we think birth has to look a certain way to have been a good or a positive experience. Even though your goal might be to have a natural drug-free birth, which is great, setting yourself up to that being the only way you can have a positive birth experience is setting yourself up for failure, because what happens if you do need to have a cesarean? I think it's better to be open-minded about what actually happens, know your preferences and the order they run in and why you would choose certain things, but be open to birth can take twists and turns and it might go any which way, and you can still have a beautiful, relaxed, calm birth, even if you end up in theatre. And it can be just as enjoyable and beautiful if you end up there, if you approach it with the right mindset. So I guess that's what I want you to come at birth from, being really educated on all the options, because we're so lucky that we live in a place where we can have these choices, but also be able to make choices that are going to lead you hopefully towards the birth you want. And if it doesn't, embrace the birth that you get. I hope that this has helped you today. I would love to hear any of your experiences with birth in the comments. Otherwise, if you would like some yoga for birth, make sure you go and check out my online yoga circle where you can have instant access to those classes. And you'll also find over there all of the videos in my course that will help you get prepared mentally and physically and emotionally for birth. I wish you all the best of luck. Have a beautiful birth.